Hey everyone, I'm Herrick Kimball and it is time for a mini bed gardening update. It is May 9th, 2023. Those of you who have watched my videos are probably familiar with the mini bed gardening idea that I came up with. I came up with it in 2016. I have gardened in this mini bed gardening system within this infrastructure. I like to refer to it as an infrastructure for gardening. For 6 seasons. I'm going into my 7th. Now, when I conceived of this idea, I had questions, and a couple of the big questions were, how long will the 6 mil bunker cover mulch that is over this garden, how long will that last? And the other question was, how long will these wood frame, untreated wood frames that are used to make the mini beds, how long will they last? And then there were questions about, well, can you really grow that much food in 30-inch by 30-inch mini beds, and things like that. In this video, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update and answer those questions. I'm going to show you some things going on here. I have a playlist of mini bed gardening videos that if you're not familiar with the system, you can go to my channel here and find that playlist and you can learn more about it. I also have a mini bed gardening trilogy. It's a PDF download. It's explaining the system and giving details. That mini bed gardening PDF trilogy report, if you want to know the system, you want to understand the logic behind the system, you'll want to get that. It's not that expensive. I'll put a link below to that. But for now, let's take a look here at some of the questions. Let's answer some of the questions that have been answered by time in this mini bed garden. So 78% of the area in this mini bed garden is covered with the 6 mil bunker cover plastic, which is permanent, it stays right in place. And the question was, well, how long will it last? And I can tell you it's lasted very well. It has a few holes, I'm sure I can find some, but that's no problem. It hasn't disintegrated, it hasn't torn up. Any holes here are from my dog who was digging for a mouse, or they're from me puncturing it accidentally with my fork or some other way. Right here you can see a patch, right here in the corner, right there, that I put in because my dog was digging for mice. And that patch has been there a couple of years. I used the same bunker cover plastic and some U-shaped pins, and I put that in there. Now, I learned a lesson from that. I let this bed and the others where I had to make similar patches, I let those beds in the fall get overgrown with weeds. And the mice saw that as an ideal environment, and they started building little nests in the mini bed. And my dog went nuts trying to get those mice. As long as I keep those mini beds clean in the fall, I haven't had that problem. Okay, so these are manageable. These mini beds are manageable. There's no reason why I should have let the weeds and everything grow after I harvested crops, but that's what happened, and that's a problem that I no longer have, because it's pretty discouraging when your dog digs up your plastic. So right here is a hole in the plastic, all right? And I have a few like that, and I don't know how that got like that. Maybe it was my dog. I don't know. I don't have a lot of damage like that, but I have a few, and it's no problem. If a weed grows in there, I pull it out. The hole has not spread. This 6 mil bunker cover plastic is really remarkably tough stuff. I don't think the sun really has any effect on it. The only thing that's going to have an effect is if you get a sharp object or there's physical damage. Now right here you can see a mini bed that I planted to spinach back on April 5th. I have my stake over there that has my information. If you haven't seen my video about how to make stakes that do not fade in the sun, check that out. But this is a mini bed with a spinach. I have 5 rows of spinach. I use my 5x7 planting stick. I have a video about that. And I just want to say that at this point, it's time to do a little cultivation in there. And I will use this right here, my pocket cultivator, to cultivate between those rows. And this topic of cultivating brings up the fact that with the mini bed gardening system, you don't need a lot of tools. You certainly don't need a rototiller, except when you're establishing the mini bed garden. You want to rototill it up so it's soft, pull off, the soil is soft, and you want to pull off any big rocks before you lay down your plastic and lay out your mini beds. Okay, so yeah, you don't need a rototiller. You can get right out here in the spring, get cultivating, get planting, and the only other two tools that you really need, or that I recommend you have, are a 4-tine garden fork, like that I use to crack the soil. I don't necessarily turn the soil, I crack it, I aerate it, and I have a video showing that. So, and then there is the short-handled hoe right here. This is my modified hoe dag. I did a video about short-handled hoes. I evaluated them for a period of years, and I came up with a conclusion that this hoe dag modified, and I talk about how I modified it, is the best mini bed gardening short hoe. And you'll see that right there, I put a little swelled end on it with masking tape so that it's a little bit more comfortable in the hand. All right, so yeah, it looks kind of hokey, I know, right there, but very practical. Love this hoe, especially since I've modified it. I'll put a link below to the video where I talk about modifying the hoe dag to make it an even better tool. Okay, so let's talk about the walkways. The spacing that I originally conceived of for this garden is ideal in my mind. It's ideal. The mini beds are where you focus your attention, and you have what I call high culture. You can put your fertilizing, your amendments, your cover crops in those mini beds, and you're focused on productivity in these small spaces. And every big and imposing project is easier if you break it down into smaller pieces. That's kind of the concept here. These small mini beds, are they productive? Yeah, they're very productive, okay? Very satisfying. This is an incredibly satisfying infrastructure for gardening. Okay, but the walkway spacing, which is in the mini bed trilogy, the spacing is ideal. What we have is islands of productivity surrounded by walkways that hold in the subsoil moisture. So these islands of productivity are feeding, their roots are getting the moisture they need through the season on the under the black plastic around them. The walkways are where when I work in the mini beds, I throw the waste, the trash, the leaves, the straw, the rye straw. Most of what you see in the walkways here, and we'll walk on down, is leaves and mulch that I can reuse, because where you see the cover crop of rye, and that's what you see here is rye cover crop. I'll talk about that more in a moment. Where you see that, I'm going to be planting crops. And today we went to the Amish greenhouse. I got some broccoli, got some peppers. It's a little early, but we seem to be ahead with the season. So I'm going to take a chance. I think we'll be okay. I'll plant those things. And I'm going to use the mulch in the walkways, the stuff you see right there, as mulch. I'm going to reuse it. And if I have an excess of that material, I can take it, and when I flip up the mini beds, and if you watch my videos, you know that when I prepare them, I flip them over, the frames I'm talking, underneath the plastic all the way around, I can stuff the leaves, the straw, and other material. So when I take my fork and I aerate by cracking the soil, I'm actually aerating and cracking the soil out several inches beyond the bed, okay? And then if I throw that organic matter under the plastic all the way around before putting the frame back on, we've got food for the microbiology in the soil all the way around the bed, okay? So it's not just in the beds where things are happening, it's happening around the beds, okay? They've got the moisture, they've got the microorganisms in the soil have food to feed on. You feed the soil and the organisms in the soil will feed your plants. That's the concept. It's a good concept. It works. So originally my thought was that I needed to keep all of these walkways swept clean. They look better when they're swept clean. But if you look in the garden now, you'll see that I have a lot of organic material that was in the beds. I toss it out when I'm working in the beds, and it's just laying there, and it's okay. I've come to the conclusion it's okay. I don't care if I have some of that material down there. I'll be using it. As I've already explained, I'll be using it, and it can just stay there, you know? It can stay there till I need it. Now, the original mini bed experimental garden was 45 beds, and I have more than that now. I think I have 90. I think it's double the size, because I realized after the first year that, hey, this is amazing. This is manageable. It is productive. It's going to work. So I expanded the garden, and the question that I really wondered is, how long will these wood frames last? And most of them at this point, going into the 7th season, are still pretty sound. A few of them, and these are probably the original ones, are really in bad shape. And I'll show you one over here, right there. I'll get my shadow out of the way, and we'll show you what will eventually happen with all of these untreated wood frames. You can see that right there. Now, let me see. Let's see if we can. Right there is the screw. And I'm going to save that screw and reuse that, okay? And I'm going to make new frames. I'm satisfied that they've lasted 6 years. They're going to last another year. This frame, I'm not going to try flipping it, as I often do I did when the frames were in good shape. I'm not going to bother flipping it. I'm going to leave it there though. It's serving the purpose, and maybe I'll run a string around it. And but I'm going to get another year out of that and the others here. I got a couple more that are like that, and the others will. Here we go over here. The others will all eventually look like that. It's okay with me. It's okay. In the meantime, look at how bad that one is. You see that? Pretty bad. Now you're wondering, why do I have that? Why do I have that folded up tomato cage there? It's a cat excluder. I ran out of hardware cloth. Let me just show you the mini beds I planted to my raspberries. I did a video showing pruning of these last fall, and you can see they all look good. They're going to bush out wonderfully, and what we have here is more canes coming up that will bear fruit next year. So where I've got a cane like way out on the end or on the corner there, I'm going to dig that out. I want the canes like we see right there, the smaller ones closer to the center stake to grow. I don't want them way out in the corners. Now, it's not mini bed related, but I want you to see the asparagus. You see all those stalks in there? The asparagus bed. I got 2 rows. I've made YouTubes about that before. 2 rows asparagus. This is the season. One of the best practices with this mini bed gardening system is growing the rye cover crops. And if you've watched my videos, you know that last year I let 2 of these rye mini beds go to seed. And I harvested the seed, and that seed that I harvested from 2 mini beds planted all the mini beds in the garden. Not all the mini beds, but all the mini beds that didn't have garlic or some other crop in them. And I pan around here. These are mostly planted to onions, these beds, and they had rye in them. So I've harvested the rye out of those. But 2 mini beds grown up to seed, the seed harvested, and I was able to plant all these mini beds. And the rye is amazing. The soil, full of roots, live roots, is something pretty special. If I didn't have that rye in there, that soil would be hard packed and kind of lifeless. Not totally, but kind of. It's alive. It's got great texture with those roots in the soil. Perfect for planting once I get those up. And another best practice, I hammer planted all of these beds with the rye. A very easy way to plant rye. I've got videos about that. Hammer planting, that works. That's a best practice. It's something that in the process here I kind of figured out and discovered, and I don't know anyone else who hammer plants, but you give it a try in your mini beds and you'll like it. Now, I should mention, this again is not something that's part of the mini bed system, but it's a pretty good idea if I don't say so myself. It's not my idea originally, but my friend Steve Lonsky's idea, and that's sheet metal mulch. I've talked about this in previous videos. I bought this metal back in 1998 from a guy. He took it off the side of his barn and replaced it, and I have used this sheet metal here as a walkway. I've used it in other parts of my gardening over the years prior to mini bed gardening. Sheet metal as a mulch works. Now, I used to use like firewood and concrete blocks to hold it down, but I've got these pins, rebar pins. My son, they're like, I don't know, 2 feet long, 18 inches, and they have a washer welded on the end. And I drove those down, and that has held the mulch really well. And here you can see that I have rototilled. I still have my rototiller, and I've rototilled here. I had potatoes here last year. I'm going to plant potatoes again here, and I'm going to plant some tomatoes. I know they say, you know, don't plant the same thing twice. Well, I'm gonna, and I don't expect there to be any problem. But the point here, I should say, is that potatoes can be grown in mini beds, but it's really not practical. Sweet potatoes, Irish potatoes, they just might as well not even grow them in mini beds. If you want to get, you know, a lot of potatoes, that's not practical. But just about everything else, from squashes to greens to onions, carrots, certainly carrots, you've seen my carrot videos, all of it can be grown here. A lot of productivity, and you can see, looks like, well, a lot of space is being wasted there. Well, no, it's not. It depends on the crop. Some crops stay within the bounds, others overflow into the walkways. It gets pretty full. This garden gets quite full. A couple last items here. One of the pleasant surprises that I found out with mini bed gardening is that my solar pyramids, and you can see one right there, that I developed, an idea I developed before mini bed gardening. It turns out they work perfectly with the mini beds. And you can see one right there, and I don't have to put a tire sidewall over it, but I do, and you know that I love my tire sidewalls, multiple uses here on the homestead. But I planted parsley in this, a little parsley seeds. Well, when did I plant them? 4, 5 seed parsley, 4 little spots of them in there, and it's coming up very nicely. These solar pyramids are remarkable. Now, I started tomatoes in the house, and I transferred them when they got a little bit, I start them, and when they get a little bit bigger, I put them in a larger pot. And I had more seedlings than I had pots for, and that I needed really to have tomatoes. So I figured, well, I'm gonna go stick these, and they were not very big. They were, I don't know, 3 inches tall at the most. They were a little leggy because I don't have the lights I should, or a greenhouse or anything like that. And I came out here and I stuck them in the solar pyramid with the parsley. And it was cold. I mean, it was, you know, fire in the house cold. It was damp, and it was that way for several days, and I figured they're gonna die. But I'm going to stick them down here because I don't, you know, hey, it's worth a try, right? The experiment. And those tomatoes lived, and they look a little pale. You can see, get down in there if you could see those. Come on, focus, focus, focus. There. You see that tomato? It grew. It lived. And there's more around here. Got another one. Well, anyway, the point is, these things are amazing. These solar pyramids are amazing, and you can find information about how to make those in my Planet Whiz-Bang idea book for gardeners, and I'll put a link to that below, or just go to planetwhizbang.com, find the gardening page, and you'll find that there, along with the mini bed gardening trilogy, which will get you off to a good start. Okay, one more thing. I guess I could go on and on. Here you could see the Y holders and the trellis there that I'll be planting. And up here, When I established this mini bed gardening, which I love and I expect to be mini bed gardening for the rest of my life, I cannot imagine going back to rows or large beds. Oh, by the way, 30 inch by 30 inch, all the same size. That's a big deal. All the same size. Conformity, okay? Or uniformity, that would be the word. Now, right here, I have a whole section, and there's more tire sidewalls. They are so handy, that never got planted to the mini beds, all right? But they are this year. And the reason they didn't get planted is because we had, in prior years before the mini bed, we had blueberry bushes, and we just can't seem to grow blueberries. Raspberries grow good for us, grapes grow good for us. The blueberries, they never have done well. So I just covered that. I grew some squash there last year. I am going to get that fixed up and put mini beds in there this year. That's part of the plan. All right, so the mini bed garden will expand, and actually some of those mini beds, the ones out here by the road, are going to have raspberries. I have raspberry plants coming soon, today, tomorrow, from Norris Farms. I'm going to get some of the fall bearing raspberries, which I don't have. Those are summer bearing. I've always grown the summer bearing. I'm going to get the fall bearing. All right, there's my wind vane up there. You can see. I'll be saying more about that in a soon to come video. I'm working on my grapes over there. I got them pruned, but I need to do a little work on them using the Y holders, whiz-bang Y holders. All right, I'm kind of running my mouth here, and it's time to draw to a close, but that's an update. This mini bed garden system, very satisfying, very manageable, very productive. Bottom line. Thanks for watching, everybody.